I want you to just picture this for a second.
Yep.
You are standing in your kitchen. It's early, maybe a Tuesday morning. The house is completely quiet, and you're just waiting for the kettle to boil. Or, maybe you're sitting in your car in the driveway for just one extra minute before going inside to face your family after a long day at work.
Oh, the driveway moment. Yeah, I know that one well.
Right. We all do it. And you open your phone. Not for any big important reason. You don't have an agenda. You just want to check like one simple thing. Maybe the weather for tomorrow or a text from a friend. But your thumb, almost operating with its own muscle memory at this point, accidentally swipes over to your main feed.
And that is exactly when the trap opens.
The trap springs completely shut.
Okay.
Because suddenly you're reading a highly speculative headline about, massive economic shift. Then you scroll just to clear it from your mind. But the next post is this intense astrology prediction about how July is going to upend everything we know.
Right. It's always July.
Always. You scroll again, just looking for a distraction. And it's a wellness influencer telling you that the way you're currently breathing is like actively ruining your nervous system.
Oh my gosh, yes. The breathing police.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you keep scrolling. 10 minutes go by, then 20. The kettle has been boiling for a while now. And by the time you finally lock your screen, your chest is just completely tight. Your breath is super shallow, just kind of sipping air into the very top of your lungs.
Yeah, you haven't actually moved your physical body in half an hour.
Right. But internally, your biology feels like you've been sprinting through a forest to escape a predator.
Yeah.
And the worst part, the absolute worst part, is you suddenly feel entirely behind on your own life. Like you're failing to prepare for a disaster you didn't even know existed 20 minutes ago.
I mean, that feeling is just so universal right now. And if you are listening to this right now and you're nodding your head or maybe feeling that familiar tightness in your chest, we really want to validate that reality for you. We see you. The collective atmosphere is just incredibly loud.
Which is exactly why we're here. Good morning, Alicia. I feel like today's deep dive is going to be a bit of a lifeline. I know I definitely need it.
Good morning, Jared. I'm so ready for this conversation. I've got my notebook right here, my massively oversized water cup filled to the brim, and my absolute favorite, completely worn out, cozy slippers on. So emotionally, physically, spiritually, I am anchored.
I appreciate that imagery so much. I am currently staring at a cup of coffee that tastes like it's trying its absolute best, but just hasn't quite woken up yet.
Oh no, the sad studio coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Which is kind of how I felt when my dog, Buster, looked at me this morning. He gave me this look of deep, just heartbreaking betrayal when I chose to walk into the studio to turn on this microphone rather than, sitting on the couch to scratch his ears for another hour.
Oh, that animal guilt is so potent. I swear our pets know exactly when we are about to do something meaningful or like when the energy is shifting in the house and they just want to tether us to the physical present world for one more minute. But honestly, sitting down to record with you, returning to the specific space we share with the listeners, it always recharges me. This is kind of my reset button.
Mine too. And we are so deeply glad to have you, the listener, here with us today. And welcome back to Vibrations and Manifestations.
So today we are exploring a massive energetic doorway that is opening right now, today, June 29th. It is a doorway leading us directly into the accelerated, highly charged energy of July 2026.
Yeah, and it's a big one.
It is. But, and I really want to state this clearly right at the top, this deep dive is absolutely not about predicting disaster. It is not about fear-mongering. And it is not about handing your personal agency over to some terrifying headline. Because we have to remember where we are in the physical year before we even look at the stars or the news. The physical seasons hold so much somatic wisdom for how we're meant to navigate these energetic shifts. Right now in the Northern Hemisphere, late June is all about heat. It's about visibility, long days, open windows, full gardens.
Everything is just out there.
Exactly. The energy is inherently moving outward. What was once a tiny seed in the dark is now totally exposed to the sun. It's a season of exposure where what has been growing quietly suddenly demands to be seen.
And equally, if you're listening to us in the Southern Hemisphere, late June carries a very different but equally crucial wisdom. It's winter. It is a season of deep roots, of stillness, of restoration, and of darkness. It's all about inner listening and tending to the things that absolutely cannot yet be seen above the soil.
And the beauty of this specific moment is that both of those seasonal realities are the perfect, necessary metaphors for our conversation today. Because the energy of July is going to demand the visibility and the fire of the summer, but surviving that acceleration without burning out completely requires the deep restorative root tending of the winter. So our intention for this deep dive is incredibly simple. Before the collective field speeds up, we need to check your foundation.
Yes. But before we break down the astrology of this doorway, we kind of have to talk about what happens to our physical bodies and our minds when the world gets too loud. Because Alicia, you and I were talking about this the other day. If we don't understand the actual physical mechanism of overwhelm, we can't actually do the spiritual work.
Right.
We just end up like meditating on top of a panic attack, which doesn't work at all.
It really doesn't. It's like trying to paint a house while it's on fire. And to understand that mechanism, I think we have to look backward for a moment. When I was prepping for this deep dive, I went back to the work of Herbert Simon. He was this thinker and economist back in the mid-20th century, right at the dawn of what we now call the information age.
Okay, yeah.
And up until Simon's work, the general consensus in economics and early psychology was that human beings were fundamentally rational calculators.
Meaning what exactly? That we just act like computers?
Essentially, yes. The prevailing theory was that if you gave a human being more information, they would naturally synthesize it and make a better, more optimized decision. Information was seen as the ultimate, unquestionable good. Therefore, a scarcity of information was the problem, and an abundance of information had to be the universal solution.
Which, to be fair, sounds completely logical on paper. Like if I want to buy a new car, having the safety specs of 10 different cars is objectively better than only having the specs of 2.
On paper, it makes perfect sense. But Simon actually started watching human behavior in the real world, how executives made decisions, how consumers bought things. And he noticed something completely contradictory to that prevailing theory. When people were flooded with too much information, when the noise level got too high, they didn't actually make the best choice.
The calculator broke.
The rational calculator broke down entirely. Instead, people did one of two things. They either completely froze, unable to make any choice at all because they were paralyzed by the variables, or they panicked and grabbed the option that felt the most emotionally urgent, regardless of whether it was actually the right choice.
Wow. So an abundance of information actually degraded their ability to use their intuition or their logic.
Precisely. Simon coined the term bounded rationality. He realized something that is so vital for us today. Human attention is a finite resource. When information becomes abundant, attention becomes scarce. Information overload doesn't build clarity. It builds a maze. It creates a biological state of perpetual static. And when we are trapped in that maze, every single input feels like a life or death emergency. We lose the ability to discern what actually matters from what is just loud.
A maze is static. That is exactly what it feels like. And I want to bring this right down to the personal level because, Alicia, when we were having coffee last week, you shared a story with me about your own recent experience with this exact maze. And your realization completely shifted how I am viewing this upcoming month.
I'm really glad we're talking about this because I want to be transparent with you, the listener. It is dangerously easy to sit behind a microphone and project this image of having it all figured out, of being perfectly zen all the time. But the truth is, during our recent deep dive hiatus, I went through a major period of disorientation.
Set the scene for us. Where were you at emotionally when we first took the break?
So when we first decided to pause the show, I thought the break was just going to be about physical rest. I was so profoundly relieved to stop the machine of weekly production. I loved the sensory relief of it. I loved waking up on a Tuesday and not having to set up the heavy microphone stand or obsessively check the audio levels or write the show notes or try to figure out what the algorithm wanted from us.
It's a lot of invisible labor.
It is. And the quiet was beautiful. For the first 2 weeks, I just lived my deeply boring, wonderful life. I spent hours in my garden. I remember kneeling in the dirt, planting tomatoes, and just smelling the wet earth. I actually tasted my morning coffee instead of gulping it down while reading an outline.
I remember you texting me a picture of your garden, saying you felt like you had finally exhaled a breath you'd been holding in your chest for 2 years.
I really had. I felt my nervous system drop into this deep, heavy peace. But then the slow creep started. Because even though I wasn't producing content, I was still consuming it. I was still opening my phone. And everywhere I looked, the algorithm was serving me content about July 2026.
Because the algorithm knows what you usually look at, even if you are on a break.
Exactly. It doesn't care that I'm on vacation. The atmosphere online started to feel incredibly heavy and frantic. I was seeing all these astrology forecasts about major outer planetary alignments, these huge shifts with Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and how wildly disruptive it was all going to be.
Right.
I was seeing headlines about global economic instability, political fracturing, climate anomalies, and I noticed my body starting to react. I wasn't just reading information, I was experiencing a biological response. I felt this intense adrenaline spike. My chest would physically tighten in the middle of the day while I was just washing dishes. I started waking up at 3 a.m. with my mind racing, my heart pounding in my throat.
God, the 3 a.m. wake-ups are the worst. What was the narrative your brain was spinning at 3 a.m.? When you're lying there in the dark, what is the story your mind is telling you to justify that panic?
The narrative was so loud, it was saying, I have to get back on the microphone right now. I have to warn the listeners. I need to get ahead of this chaos.
Wow.
Yeah. If I don't explain this coming astrological weather to them, if I don't give them a survival guide, I am failing them. I felt this overwhelming, suffocating urgency to produce a deep dive telling everyone how to brace for the impending doom. And Jared, it felt so real. That's the scariest part. It felt like divine guidance. It felt like a deep, intuitive gut instinct screaming at me to act.
But you didn't text me to set up the mic, so what changed?
One morning, I was sitting on my living room floor, practically vibrating with anxiety. I had my phone in my hand, ready to text you to end the hiatus early, and suddenly a profound realization hit me. I realized that urgency is often just adrenaline wearing a spiritual costume.
Oh, wait. I want to pause this, right?
Yeah, let's pause.
Let's hold some silence for a second. Urgency is just adrenaline wearing a spiritual costume. Let that sink in for a moment. Feel where that lands in your physical body right now. How often do we mistake a dysregulated, hijacked nervous system for a spiritual calling?
Far too often. We've been conditioned to think that because a feeling is intense, it must be important. We think that because a feeling demands immediate action, it must be the universe speaking to us. But the universe doesn't usually scream at you to panic. True guidance doesn't feel like a hostage situation.
Right.
So I did something incredibly difficult. I physically took my phone and placed it in another room. I sat down on the floor with my journal and I forced myself to take 10 deep, painfully slow breaths. I felt my sit bones on the rug and I wrote down one question. What is the calmest, useful thing I can offer right now?
Not the loudest thing.
Not the loudest, not the most clickable, not the warning siren, the calmest, useful thing. And in that quiet space, once the adrenaline actually drained out of my blood, the answer was obvious. The world does not need another warning bell right now. The collective is already vibrating with fear. What the world needs right now is a tuning fork.
A tuning fork, meaning a frequency of grounded resonance that people can organically align their own energy to, rather than just another voice shouting over the noise.
Exactly. When a room is full of static, adding a louder voice doesn't help anyone hear better. It just degrades the audio quality of the whole room. You have to introduce a pure, clean note and let the other frequencies tune themselves to it. And that is what this June 29th doorway is all about. It is the universe offering us a tuning fork before the Symphony of July gets chaotic.
That distinction between the warning bell and the tuning fork is everything. And it perfectly mirrors an experience I had just a few days ago, which, to be honest, humbled me completely. It showed me exactly how easily that static can hijack our biology, even when we think we are totally self-aware and doing the work.
I want to hear this. Tell us what happens.
Okay, so I was sitting at my desk working on a writing project. I had a cup of tea, some soft instrumental music playing. I was feeling completely grounded, totally in my ventral vagal state. And then my phone buzzed. It was a group chat with some close friends, people I love and respect deeply. Someone had posted a link to a very dramatic, highly speculative news headline about the economy and impending food shortages.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And immediately, almost instantly, another friend responded with a screenshot of an astrological prediction from a very popular account that seemingly backed up the disaster scenario.
Oh, the digital echo chamber effect. When the news and the astrology validate each other's panic.
Instantly. Within 3 minutes, a group chat that is usually reserved for dinner plans and photos of our dogs devolved into absolute chaos. People were spiraling, catastrophizing, arguing about what it meant, throwing out wild conspiracy theories. And the fascinating and, frankly, terrifying part was watching what happened to my own physical body as I watched the text bubbles pop up.
What did you feel somatically? Like, walk us through the actual physical sensations.
It started as a wave of heat right in the pit of my stomach.
Right.
And then that heat rapidly rose up into my throat. My chest physically tightened, like someone had pulled a belt around my ribs. My breath became incredibly shallow, and my thumb, Alicia, it was like my thumb had its own consciousness disconnected from my brain. I started furiously scrolling, opening new tabs on my browser, searching for answers, trying to validate or debunk what my friends were saying. I was desperate for certainty. I felt this intense, burning need to fix the anxiety in the room by finding the ultimate truth.
That is Herbert Simon's maze in action. You were flooded with information and you went into a sympathetic nervous system response, an action-oriented panic.
I really did. But because we've been practicing this for years, there's this tiny, quiet observer part of my brain that suddenly woke up and said, Jared, look at your body. Look at what you are doing. And I realized, I am not gathering information right now. I am feeding biological appellation. I am actively pouring gasoline onto the fire of my own nervous system. So I stopped. I did a very physical, somatic action. I took the phone and I placed it face down on the wooden desk. Just the sound of the plastic hitting the wood, that sharp clack, served as a physical boundary.
Let's actually give that to the listener right now.
Yeah.
Notice where your phone is right this second. Notice the boundaries you have with your devices. Breaking the visual loop is the first step to breaking the biological loop.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I let myself breathe for 5 solid minutes. I felt my feet flat on the floor. I felt the texture of my socks. I let the static in my body settle back down into the earth. And then, when I had my signal back, I picked up the phone and typed one single message to the group. I said, before we all spiral, what do we actually factually know to be true right now? And what is one grounded thing we can do today in our physical lives?
What happened? How did they react?
It was like popping a balloon. The frenetic energy of the entire chat shifted immediately. People stopped sending links. Someone replied, you know what, you're right. I'm going to put my phone away and go for a walk. Another friend just said, honestly, I don't know anything for sure. I'm just really scared. We shifted from static to signal, from performative panic to vulnerable honesty.
That is the perfect example of being a tuning fork. But Jared, I want to push back on this for a second because I think this is where the rubber meets the road for our listeners. Isn't there a fine line between protecting your peace and just being willfully ignorant of real-world problems? How do we balance that? Because ignoring a fire in your kitchen just to stay calm isn't spiritual, it's dangerous. How do you tell the difference in your body between a genuine intuition that you urgently need to act to protect yourself and just the static of a hijacked nervous system?
That is the crucial distinction, isn't it? Willful ignorance is a collapse response. It's checking out because you simply can't cope. True signal is staying present but refusing to panic. For me, the difference between genuine intuition and static comes down to the literal texture of the energy in your body.
Explain what you mean by the texture of the energy.
Well, static, that activated nervous system state, feels jagged. It feels frantic and brittle. It rushes you. It insists that if you don't do something right this exact second, you're going to be destroyed. It physically constricts your vision until you only see the threat. But true intuition, a genuine gut feeling, even if it is warning you of very real danger, has a core of deep stillness.
Right?
It's heavy, solid, and impeccably clear. Intuition says move to the left, and it gives you the absolute clarity to execute that movement. Static screams run in every direction at once because everything is on fire.
Right.
Intuition restores your power of choice in a crisis. Static strips your choices away and replaces them with a reflex.
Intuition restores your power of choice. Static strips it away. That is beautifully said. And that distinction is the exact bridge we need to understand the core teaching of today's deep dive. Because the specific astrological events converging on June 29th are perfectly architecturally designed to help us clear that static and anchor into our true signal before the acceleration of July arrives.
So let's unpack this astrology, and I want to ask you to do this in a way that makes sense, even if someone listening doesn't know a natal chart from a grocery list. Like, I often wonder, how does a rock floating millions of miles away in space actually affect my nervous system down here in my living room?
That is the best question to start with. We have to demystify this. Think of astrology not as giant planetary magnets pulling on your brain, but rather as a symbolic clock. Just like the hands on a wall clock don't cause it to be 5 p.m., they just indicate that it is 5 p.m. The planets are indicators of the energetic weather. They are a language of archetypes that perfectly mirror our internal biology and our collective cycles. And on June 29th, the clock is pointing to 3 massive shifts happening on the exact same day. The Capricorn Full Moon, Mercury retrograde in Cancer, and Jupiter entering Leo.
So we have Earth, water, and fire all making major moves at the exact same time. Let's break these down one by one. Let's start with the Earth, the Capricorn full moon.
I always view Capricorn energy as the ultimate pragmatist of the zodiac. Capricorn is the architect, the builder, the wise elder who knows that a beautiful vision without a solid blueprint is just a fantasy. Now, astronomically and metaphorically, a full moon is a time of maximum illumination. The sun is completely lighting up the moon. It brings things out of the shadows. So when we have a full moon in the sign of Capricorn, it is like a massive, blinding spotlight being shown directly onto the physical, structural foundation of your life.
It's like the structural engineer metaphor we were talking about.
Exactly. Walk us through that metaphor because it makes it so clear.
Okay, so imagine you are about to build a beautiful, massive addition onto your house.
Yeah.
You want a second story, a gorgeous sunroom with skylights, a wraparound porch. That grand vision represents the expansive, fast-paced energy of July. But before the contractors will even look at your Pinterest board, the city sends a structural engineer to inspect your basement. That engineer is the Capricorn full moon. They walk into the dark, damp, unglamorous parts of your life with a heavy flashlight and a clipboard. They tap on the concrete. They look for hairline cracks. They check the load-bearing walls. Because it fundamentally does not matter how beautiful your new sunroom is, if the foundation is rotting,
Yeah.
the walls have to be able to hold the weight of the new roof.
And this is where so many people in the modern spiritual manifestation communities get completely tripped up. We want to skip the foundation. We want to jump straight to the fun part, the vision board, the crystal grids, the high vibration visualizations. We want to manifest the velvet couch for the new living room. But Capricorn energy steps in and reminds us that sometimes the absolute most spiritual thing you can do is sit down and pay a past due bill.
Yes, sometimes the most profound manifestation practice is opening Microsoft Excel and making a budget spreadsheet. It's having a hard, awkward, thoroughly unsexy conversation with your landlord. It's finally scheduling that dental appointment you've been putting off for 2 years. It's repairing the physical container of your daily life. Because the universe simply cannot pour expansive, accelerated energy into a container that is full of holes. If it tries, the energy will just leak out and cause a flood.
So the Capricorn full moon is shining that spotlight and asking you directly, what structure in your life is no longer strong enough to hold the future you keep praying for? What practical thing needs to be repaired? What mundane task needs to be completed before you can grow?
And right as we are down in the basement doing that physical foundation check, the summon event happens. Mercury stations retrograde in the sign of Cancer. Now, I always hear people groaning about Mercury retrograde. Explain the mechanics of this, Alicia. Why does a planet moving backward make my ex text me?
I love debunking this one. Astronomically, Mercury is not actually flying backward in space. That would break the laws of physics. It is an optical illusion based on our vantage point from Earth. Think of it like being on a fast train passing a slower train on the tracks beside you. For a moment as you pass it, the slower train appears to be moving backward, even though you are both moving forward.
Okay, that makes perfect sense visually.
Right. And metaphorically, when Mercury, the planet of communication, perception, and the mind, appears to move backward, it signals a mandated review period. The universe is putting you on that slower train to look at the scenery you rushed past. It is not a cosmic punishment where your laptop breaks just to torture you. It is the universe pulling you backward to review the systems you skipped over. And right now, it is retrograding in Cancer.
How does Cancer change the flavor of that review?
Well, if Capricorn is the concrete foundation of the house, Cancer is the emotional wiring inside the walls. Cancer rules the home, the family dynamic, the mother wound, our deepest biological need for safety, and the memories stored in our physical tissues. So Mercury retrograde in Cancer is a deep, unflinching audit of our emotional wiring.
So it illuminates the places where our emotional circuits get overloaded, especially when we feel threatened or unsafe.
Exactly. It asks us to look at how we communicate when our nervous system is hijacked by static. When you feel unappreciated by your partner, do you shut down and give the silent treatment? Do you yell? Do you become a fawning people pleaser to keep the peace? Cancer holds the blueprint of our childhood survival strategies, and this transit is putting a magnifying glass on those strategies and asking, are you still using a childhood survival tactic to navigate adult conflicts?
Oof. Let's sit with that question for a second.
Yeah.
Are you still using a childhood survival strategy to navigate adult conflicts? Because when the energy accelerates in July, if your emotional wiring is faulty, that power surge is going to blow a fuse.
And it also asks us to review where we consistently confuse familiarity with safety. This is a big one. Sometimes we stay in toxic situations or we keep repeating self-sabotaging communication loops simply because our nervous system recognizes the pattern. The body says, I know exactly how this anxiety feels. I know this dynamic of being dismissed. I know how to survive this. Therefore, I am safe. But familiar is not the same as safe. Mercury retrograde in Cancer is asking us to rewire those circuits, to practice saying out loud, I am feeling scared right now, but I am safe enough to communicate honestly without running away.
So we've checked the foundation with the Capricorn Earth energy. We've inspected and rewired the emotional circuits with the Cancer water energy. And only then, only after those two grounded steps are taken, do we get to the third event of the June 29th doorway, Jupiter entering Leo.
The main event, the fire, the visibility.
Right. Jupiter is the planet of massive expansion, abundance, growth, and magnifying whatever it touches. It makes things huge. Leo is the sign of the heart, of courage, of radical self-expression, creativity, and visibility. It is the performer, the generous leader, the radiant, unapologetic sun. So Jupiter entering Leo is like walking up from your newly inspected basement, walking past your newly rewired walls, throwing open the front doors, turning on the brightest porch light imaginable, and stepping out to let yourself be fully seen by the world.
It is such a beautiful, triumphant energy. It's the universe handing you a microphone and saying, stop hiding, show us your art, speak your truth, take up space.
But, and this is the massive crucial but that we keep coming back to, look at the immense danger of skipping the first two steps. What happens if you try to expand into Leo, if you try to demand visibility and leadership and massive growth without first building the Capricorn structure and healing the Cancer emotional wiring?
It becomes performative grandiosity. It becomes purely ego-driven drama. We see this all the time, especially online. People who demand the spotlight, who go viral, but because they have done zero emotional regulation work, the second they get a single negative comment, they completely collapse or they lash out aggressively at their audience. Or you see people who launch massive creative projects or businesses with huge fanfare pure Jupiter and Leo. But because they didn't build the practical Capricorn structure to sustain it, the project falls apart in a month and leaves them in debt.
Exactly. Visibility without structure is just painting a target on your back.
Yeah.
Expression without emotional regulation is just projecting your unhealed trauma onto an audience. That is why the doorway of June 29th is so profoundly brilliant. The universe is literally giving us the exact sequence we need to survive and thrive in July. Foundation first, emotional wiring second, then, and only then, visibility.
And the most fascinating part of all of this, Jared, is that this sequence isn't just an esoteric astrological concept. This sequence is literally how our human biology works. When we were prepping for this deep dive, you brought up Dr. Stephen Porges's Polyvagal Theory, and the way it aligns with this astrology completely blew my mind. Can you explain the biological mechanism behind this? How does our nervous system actually dictate our ability to manifest?
I would love to, because this is where the science really grounds the spirituality. Manifestation is not just a mental exercise. You don't just sit on a cushion, think happy thoughts, and wait for reality to bend to your will. Manifestation is a deeply biological process. Your physical nervous system is the literal antenna that receives and transmits reality. So let's look at polyvagal theory. In everyday language, this is the science of the body's subconscious safety radar.
Our autonomic nervous system is constantly scanning the environment.
Right. It's scanning every face, every tone of voice, every news headline, looking for cues of safety or cues of threat. This process happens below our conscious awareness. It's called neuroception. Now, when your radar detects safety, when you are grounded, structurally secure, and emotionally regulated, your nervous system drops into what is called the ventral vagal state. This is the state of social engagement. Your heart rate is steady, your digestion works, and most importantly, your prefrontal cortex, the logical, creative, future planning part of your brain, is fully online. In this state, you can connect with people, you can learn, you can create, you can manifest. You're tuned directly to your true signal.
But what happens when the radar detects a constant stream of threats? What happens when we are doomscrolling Herbert Simon's maze?
The system radically shifts gears. It drops into sympathetic activation. This is your classic fight or flight response. Your heart races, cortisol and adrenaline flood your bloodstream, and your prefrontal cortex literally shuts down. Blood moves away from the creative centers of your brain and goes to your limbs so you can run. In this state, you lose the ability to see the big picture. Everything becomes a binary, survive or die. And if the threat continues relentlessly and your body realizes you can't fight or flee, you drop even further down the ladder into dorsal vagal collapse, the freeze response. You numb out, you dissociate, you lie on the couch for 6 hours, unable to move. Both of those states, the frantic fight-flight and the frozen collapse, are what we call static.
This is so critical for people to understand. If your nervous system is chronically flooded by the news, by toxic relationships, by the chaotic energy of the collective field, your receiver is broken. You literally cannot manifest expansive, beautiful things from a state of survival because to a flooded nervous system, every single new possibility feels like a threat to be managed.
Yes. Think about it. If you are in chronic survival mode and the universe hands you an incredible new job opportunity or a healthy relationship, your body won't perceive it as a blessing. It will perceive the change as dangerous, and it will subconsciously sabotage the opportunity just to keep you in the familiar, safe misery it knows how to survive. That is why media overload is not just a bad habit. It is actively destroying your ability to manifest. It hijacks your nervous system, keeps you in chronic static, and tricks you into believing that being in a state of panic is a form of civic responsibility.
Wow, let's repeat that. It tricks you into believing that panic is a form of responsibility. I used to do this all the time. I thought that if I wasn't obsessing over the news, if I wasn't constantly feeling terrible about the state of the world, I was a bad, unfeeling person. But panic doesn't help anyone. It just adds more static to the collective field. So let's clearly define these three frequencies we keep mentioning so listeners can identify exactly where they are operating from. Let's start with static.
You defined static perfectly earlier with your story about the hiatus.
Static is urgency without clarity. It's the feeling of being rushed, flooded, and commanded by fear. It's the breathless, jagged voice in your head that says, you must act right now, you must burn your life down, you must pick a side, you must buy this thing or you won't survive. Static demands immediate compliance. It does not allow for questions, and it certainly does not allow for rest.
And contrasting that, we have signal. Signal is the calm, quiet truth that remains after the body settles into that ventral vagal state. If static is a blaring fire alarm, signal is the deep resonant vibration of a cello string. It doesn't scream at you. It waits patiently for you to be quiet enough to hear it. It is the solid knowing in your bones that says, this relationship has run its course, or this is the creative project I need to focus on, or simply, I need to go to sleep. Signal never strips your agency. It restores your power of choice.
And then we have the third frequency, which is where manifestation truly matures. It is called service. Service is grounded action. It is what happens when you take your clear personal signal and you move it out into the world.
I like to think of service using the analogy of noise-canceling headphones. Do you know how those actually work mechanically?
They don't just block sound, right? They produce a sound.
Exactly. A noise-canceling headphone has a tiny microphone on the outside that listens to the chaotic static of the environment, the airplane engine, the talking, the traffic. And then the headphone instantly produces the exact inverse sound wave. It plays a frequency that perfectly neutralizes the chaos, creating a pocket of absolute silence for the listener. That is what service is. When you are regulated, when you are anchored in your signal, you can walk into a chaotic, panicked room, and your calm presence acts as the inverse wave. You neutralize the panic around you just by remaining grounded.
That is a stunning analogy. Service is the inverse wave. It is the shift from how do I get what I want to how do I become a coherent, regulating participant in the collective? Because true manifestation in July is not just going to be about manifesting a car or a check. It is going to be about asking, how do I build a structure that supports not just me, but my community? How do my actions create psychological safety for others? Service is signal put into action.
I think we have fully built the foundation. We understand Herbert Simon's maze. We understand the astrological sequence of Capricorn, Cancer, and Leo, and we understand the biology of our nervous system. Now, it is time for the workshop portion of this deep dive. We are going to guide you through 4 foundation tools. These are real-time, practical somatic practices that you can use today to prepare for the July doorway.
And as we go through these, please remember that this is an interactive participation point. We are going to ask you to pause. We will hold actual silence for you. If you are driving, please keep your eyes on the road and just ponder these mentally. But if you are at home, grab your journal or simply close your eyes and check in with your body.
Let's start with tool 1, the full moon foundation check. This is tied directly to that Capricorn structural engineer energy. I want you to visualize the physical and metaphorical structures of your life right now. Your daily routines, your finances, your boundaries with your family, your work habits, your physical health. Now, I am going to ask you 3 questions. Let the first, most honest answer rise up without filtering or judging it.
First question, look at your life right now. What structure is no longer strong enough to carry the weight of who you are becoming?
Let's hold that. Second question, What foundational element needs practical, unglamorous repair before you try to expand any further? Is it a budget, a conversation, a sleep schedule?
Just observe what comes up. And finally, what part of you is ready to be visible, but only if you promise to stay grounded in your integrity?
Listen to your body here. You do not have to fix those things today. The full moon's only job is to illuminate the cracks. Awareness is always the first step of repair.
Which brings us to tool 2, the signal or static check. This is your somatic intervention for when you feel that maze of information overload closing in on you. I want you to take your right hand and gently place it flat on the center of your chest or down on your belly, whichever feels more anchoring to you.
Just feel that contact.
Feel the physical warmth of your own hand. Feel the boundary of your body.
Notice the rhythm of your breathing. Don't force it to change or slow down. Just observe it. Is it high and tight in your throat? Is it expanding your ribs?
Just be with it. Now, bring to mind a decision you need to make or a piece of news that has been deeply bothering you this week. Hold it in your mind and ask your body this direct question. Am I feeling clear or am I feeling hijacked?
Feel the texture of the answer. If the answer is hijacked, if you feel that jagged static, I want you to silently repeat this phrase. I do not need to obey urgency to honor truth.
That's so important.
Let that settle into your tissues. Urgency is just adrenaline. You can wait for the signal.
That phrase is a total lifeline. I do not need to obey urgency to honor truth. Tool 3 builds right on top of that. It's the July discernment filter. Because as we enter July, the collective field is going to be throwing wild predictions, chaotic news cycles, and intense spiritual rhetoric at you daily. You need a rigorous filter to run all that information through before you let it infect your nervous system.
This is a 3-part filter. Here it is. Before you share an article, before you spiral over a text message, before you buy into a fear-based astrology reading, ask these 3 things. Filter number 1, body. Does this piece of information ground me in my body, or does it hijack me into fight or flight?
Filter number 2, evidence. Look at the actual claim being made. What do I factually know to be true right now versus what is an assumption, a projection, or a fear-based extrapolation of the future?
Filter number 3, integrity. Does this information invite me to act with courage, compassion, and grounded leadership? Or does it invite me to panic, hide, or attack others? Let's use a real-world example. Say you see a headline that says, new legislation will destroy the economy in 30 days. You run it through the filter, body, makes my chest tight, my breath shallow. It hijacks me. Evidence. I don't know the specifics of the legislation, and predicting a total collapse in 30 days is a massive assumption. Integrity. It makes me want to hoard groceries and yell at strangers on the internet. Conclusion. It fails the filter. It is static. Put it down. Walk away.
It truly is that simple. You have absolute permission to reject static. And finally, tool 4, the one brave action rule. With all this Leo fire and expansive Jupiter energy, the temptation in July is going to be to burn your whole life down and start over. Quit the job and the relationship, move to a new city, shave your head.
The classic astrological transit breakdown. We've all been there.
Mm-hmm.
I once tried to move to a cabin in the woods during an eclipse season, literally just because my Wi-Fi was slow.
We really have all done it. But remember, speed without structure is chaos. So the rule for navigating acceleration safely is to scale your actions down to the most potent, grounded point of leverage. Do not try to change 20 things at once. Choose one brave, grounded action.
One clear boundary you finally set with a parent. One honest, vulnerable text message to a partner. 1 hour dedicated strictly to your creative project without looking at your phone. One bill that you sit down and negotiate. What is your one brave action for this week?
Just one. I love how actionable that is. It takes all the esoteric planetary energy in the sky and puts it right into our actual physical hands.
And speaking of bringing things down to reality, let's transition into my favorite part of the workshop. Let's clear that static and tune into magic. It is time for manifestation debug mode.
Yes. This is where we look at the bugs in our internal code, the places where we are subconsciously resisting the work while pretending to do the work. I want to throw some rapid-fire, gentle, but very honest diagnostic questions at you. If you feel a little pinch in your gut when I say one of these, pay attention. That is your intuition flagging a bug in the code.
I'll start with one that gets me every time. Are you confusing the intensity of an emotion with the importance of a situation? I'll give you a real example of this.
Yeah.
Last month, I got a slightly cryptic email from a collaborator. My stomach dropped. I felt an intense wave of panic. I immediately started texting Alicia, saying this is a sign for the universe. The collaboration is doomed. I need to pull out of the contract. The intensity was a 10 out of 10. But then I ate a sandwich, and I realized my blood sugar was just low, and the email was actually just poorly worded. I confused the intensity of my hunger with the importance of the email. Where are you doing that in your life?
Oh, that is so real. Here's another one. Are you using spiritual language to avoid taking practical, uncomfortable responsibility for a mess you made? I'm guilty of this. Years ago, I ghosted a friend because we had a minor disagreement and I didn't want to deal with the conflict. When someone asked me about it, I said, "Oh, our vibrations just didn't align anymore. I am just protecting my peace." No, I wasn't. I was being avoidant. I was using a spiritual concept as a shield against accountability. Where are you using protecting your peace to avoid a necessary, uncomfortable conversation?
Ouch. That's a direct hit. How about this? Are you desperate to be seen and validated by others, or are you actually trying to be useful and be of service?
Like that's it. And the final diagnostic, are you waiting for a mystical sign from the universe to make a decision when the reality is you already know the exact right answer, but you're just terrified to deal with the real-world consequences of that choice?
Yeah. These questions aren't meant to shame you. They're meant to debug the manifestation process. Because if you are secretly terrified of success or conflict, you will manifest delays and call it divine timing. If we can be honest about our resistance, we strip it of its power.
Let's do a real-time reflection prompt to cement this clarity. I'm going to start a sentence, and I want you, the listener, to finish it. Speak it out loud if you're alone, or just hear it loudly in your own mind. The signal I want to strengthen in July is...
Find your word. Let me give you some examples if you're stuck. The signal I want to strengthen in July is calm leadership. The signal I want to strengthen in July is creative courage. The signal I want to strengthen is community care. The signal I want to strengthen is unapologetic joy. What is yours? Say it again. The signal I want to strengthen in July is...
Claim it. Hold on to that signal, because now we are going to take that intellectual understanding and we are going to integrate it somatically. We're going to anchor it deeply into your physical body so you don't lose it when the scrolling starts. Will you lead us through the guided visualization?
It would be my absolute honor. I want to invite you to shift your physical posture just a little bit. If you can, place both feet flat on the floor. Uncross your legs, let your hands rest open, palms facing up, in your lap. If it is safe to do so, let your eyes drift closed. Or just soften your gaze and look at a point on the floor in front of you.
Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Deliberately unclench your jaw. Let your tongue fall away from the roof of your mouth. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for a second and let it out with an audible sigh. I want you to imagine that you are standing outside. It is nighttime, the air around you is perfectly still, and it is a comfortable ambient temperature. You look up and the sky is a deep velvet indigo, completely clear of clouds, and hanging right above you is the Capricorn Full Moon. It is massive, luminous, and incredibly bright. But its light isn't harsh. It is a steady, clarifying silver light. It isn't rushing, it isn't asking anything of you. It is simply illuminating exactly where you stand.
Let's just be here for a moment. Notice the feeling of the ground beneath your feet. It is solid earth. It is ancient. You can hold your weight effortlessly.
As you look forward in the moonlight, you realize you are standing a few paces away from an ancient, beautiful stone doorway. This doorway is freestanding in the landscape, and you intuitively understand that this doorway represents the threshold into July. Beyond the doorway, the atmosphere is entirely different. You can't quite see through it, but you can feel it. You can hear the wind whipping on the other side. You can sense a vibration, an electric speed, a rapid acceleration of time and events. The field beyond the doorway is intensely alive and demanding.
But you are not there yet. You
Yeah.
are here, in the stillness, under the full moon. You do not have to rush. You are safe.
Before you step through, the moonlight catches something on the ground at your feet. You look down and you see 3 objects resting in the grass. I want you to reach down and pick up the first object. It is a rough, heavy stone. Feel its weight in your palm. Run your thumb over its textured surface. This stone represents your structure, your physical routines, your boundaries, your practical life. Holding the stone, ask yourself silently, What needs strengthening before I move forward?
Let the answer arrive without forcing it. It might be a word, an image, or just a quiet knowing. Now reach down and pick up the second object. It is a small, beautifully carved wooden bowl filled with cool, clear water. Hold the bowl in both hands. Feel the coolness radiating into your palms. This water represents your emotional world, your memories, your family patterns, your tender inner child. Holding this water, ask yourself silently, what pattern needs review and healing?
See the reflection of the moon in the water? Finally, reach down for the third object. It is a small, unhoused flame hovering just above the grass. Miraculously, you can cup it in your hands, and it does not burn you. It just provides a deep, radiant warmth. This flame represents your visibility, your Leo fire, your courage to be seen. Cupping this flame, ask yourself silently, what is ready to be seen if I promise to keep it safe?
Hold that vision. You are holding the heavy stone, the cool water, and the warm flame. You are holding your foundation, your emotions, and your courage. Look at the doorway. It is time. I want you to speak this mantra silently in your mind or whisper it aloud. I release what cannot hold. I review what still needs healing. I strengthen the signal I choose to live by.
I release what cannot hold. I review what still needs healing. I strengthen the signal I choose to live by.
Now, in your mind's eye, walk toward the doorway. You are not running into panic. You are not bracing yourself for impact. You are walking with deliberate, grounded steps. You step over the threshold. You enter the wind, the speed, the electricity of July. But you are not swept away, because in your chest, you carry your signal. Let that one word you chose earlier, courage, peace, boundaries, joy, glow like a hearth fire right in the center of your heart. It is your anchor in the acceleration.
Take a deep breath. Hold it at the top for just a moment. And exhale fully. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Feel the chair supporting you. And when you are ready, gently open your eyes and come back to the room.
Welcome back. Notice how your body feels different right now than it did when we started talking about the news and the algorithms? You have just successfully shifted your biological frequency from static to signal.
What a beautiful anchoring journey. Thank you, Jared. As we wrap up this workshop, let's briefly recap the terrain we just covered. We looked at June 29th as a massive astrological doorway into the accelerated energy of July 2026. We explored the Capricorn Full Moon's demand that we check our physical and practical foundation, just like a structural engineer. We looked at Mercury retrograde in Cancer as an optical illusion that mandates a review of our emotional wiring and childhood survival strategies. And we framed Jupiter entering Leo as turning on the porch light, the courage to become visible, but only after the foundation is perfectly secure.
We also named the 3 frequencies we navigate daily through the lens of Polyvagal Theory. Static, which is the fight-or-flight urgency without clarity. Signal, which is the calm ventral vagal truth that remains when the body settles. And service, which is acting as the noise-canceling headphone for the collective, moving from self-centered manifestation to being a regulated, coherent participant in the world.
And before we give you your call to action, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on this week. We have spent this entire deep dive talking about the necessity of filtering out digital static so you can hear your signal. But as the field continues to accelerate, and as the algorithms get better at mimicking urgency, what if true manifestation in the future requires us to take it a step further? What if the next evolution of human consciousness requires us to completely unplug from the digital grid?
Oh, wow. That is a huge question.
We are entering an era where the ultimate luxury isn't wealth or status or even free time. The ultimate luxury of the future might simply be an unregulated nervous system. A completely regulated nervous system. A mind that is entirely free from the algorithmic maze. Ask yourself this week, how much of your reality is just pixels on a screen telling you to panic? And what would happen to your manifestation power if you simply stopped looking at it?
That is something to really journal about tonight. And speaking of action, here's our call to action for you this week. We want you to implement the one brave action rule. Choose the signal you want to strengthen before July fully unfolds. Write it down. And then choose one small, grounded physical action that proves to your nervous system that you are already living on that timeline.
Clean that one chaotic corner of your bedroom. Send the text message you've been avoiding. Set the boundary with love. Rest for 20 minutes without your phone. Choose your one brave action and let that be your personal doorway practice.
And please, Remind yourself that you do not have to do this perfectly. If you want more support with this, remember to subscribe to our weekly vibe letter. We send out journaling prompts, somatic check-ins, and deeper dives into these specific tools right to your inbox. And check out our YouTube channel. We have sleep alignment guides that are specifically designed to help your nervous system drop into that ventral vagal state while you rest.
Jared, I want to sincerely thank you for holding space today, opening up about the group chat, the anxiety you felt, and navigating all of that. That vulnerability is exactly why this space feels so safe and transformative.
Thank you, Alicia. I really appreciate that. And I have to say, hearing your story about your garden, telling these stories here with you and with our listeners, reminds me exactly why I miss these workshop conversations. I feel incredibly refreshed and aligned right now. Buster the dog's just going to have to share me with you all a little longer.
He will survive. Next week, we are continuing this mini-series with a deep dive called Signal or Static: Discernment when the Field Gets Loud. We are going to go even deeper into how to navigate group panic, social media intensity, and spiritual urgency without abandoning your inner authority. It's going to be incredibly practical.
I can't wait for that one. Thank you to everyone listening for walking this path with us today, for bringing your time, your attention, and your open hearts to this work.
We mean this from the bottom of our hearts. Wherever you are right now, no matter how much static is in your life, you are exactly where you are meant to be. And you have the immense biological power to tune your own receiver.
We will meet you right back here next week. Until then, keep your foundation strong and let your signal ring true.